Hey guys, Christian here. I can't believe we're already on episode 10, so let's celebrate a little bit. We launched a few new products last week, and one is this really cool little charger called the Zeus. As you know, Zeus is the god of lightning, and this little charger lives up to its name. Not only does it charge your phone for about a week, but it's got 3 different light functions and can jumpstart a dead car battery dozens of times. And not just little cars. We're talking this thing will work up to an 8-liter diesel engine. That's a big engine it can turn over. So here's the deal. They're normally $150, and on our 10th episode, we're going to sell 10 of these things for $100 each. That's $50 off if you can't do basic math, which sometimes I can't. Just use the code GREG, G-R-E-G, in honor of this week's guest. As always, when they're gone, they're gone. Hey everybody, I'm Christian Schaff. Welcome to the Life Uncharted Podcast. Each week we sit down with extraordinary people who have stuck their nose in the wind, stepped off the beaten path, and forged their own path to success. What made them do it? How did they succeed? And how can we follow in their groundbreaking footsteps? You're about to find out right now. My guest this week is my buddy Greg Bennett. This is the third of 3 interviews I knocked out while cruising through Boulder on our way to Outdoor Retailer a few weeks ago. Greg is another endurance athlete, and yes, another triathlete. But as different as Tim and Rinny were in earlier podcasts, Greg is very much his own animal. Here's what I mean. When flying to races, Greg could tell you which flight to take based on which aircraft flies that route. And that helped him determine not only leg space for each seat, but also flight altitude, which determined oxygen, pressure, and a bunch of other factors that could affect a race for him a few days later. Or how about this one? Greg used to visualize races in such depth that he'd scare people out of the trails when he'd yell and thrust his arms in the air, crossing imaginary finish lines. Finish lines he, most of the time, crossed first in real life later in the season. See, Greg harnessed the power of his brain to actually improve his winning percentages in his early 40s, an age when most people's results started to diminish. And by the way, Greg was already an Olympian and a world champion at that point. This guy is also a world-class thinker. You're going to see what I mean. Hold on tight for this one. There's a lot to hear here. Here we go. Greg, welcome to the Life Uncharted Podcast.
Thanks for having me. What an honor.
We've been talking for an hour, so I thought we should probably start recording this. That happens every time, right? We go over and we're like setting up and having the best conversation.
Yeah, now we've got nothing to say.
Nothing.
This is just going to be silence for 50 minutes now.
Super boring. So we're actually, I've done a lot of these at Park City TV, but we're sitting on your deck overlooking, what is this area called here?
This is called Wonderland Lake.
Wonderland Lake.
Yeah,
we're in Boulder,
Wonderland
Colorado.
Lake, Boulder.
You can probably see the pictures on Instagram and stuff, but nice spot you have here.
We're very fortunate. Honestly, we sit out here and we go, wow, how do we get to be here?
Right.
To be honest, it really is a very special place. And it's nice to be able to have friends come and stay and enjoy it with us. That's kind of what we were always hoping. It's such a big house and there's only, 3 of us now.
Yep.
But, we have this 5-bedroom home and we're kind of like, no, it's cool if we can fill it and have people come and stay. Not that all your listeners should come and stay and give us a call, but...
Do you want to give them your address right now and your key code? No? No, it's a beautiful place. I mean, I know this is audio, but there's people jogging by and riding bikes by and there's paragliders out and it's kind of perfect life out here, man. You got it set up.
It's pretty nice.
Retired life.
You know what's crazy though? We built this place back about 10 years ago and when we were athletes and training so hard all day, every day, I never came out on the deck here. I never really sat. And it was only the last 18 months since we retired that I kind of wondered, I found out that this is actually like a preserve. It's a wildlife sanctuary. Yeah. And I've sat out here and I've watched bald eagles and I've watched hawks and there's deers and bears and all this activity.
You see bears out here?
We've had a couple of bears, and
that's cool.
But more in the September, October. They're just trying to get their last feed before we lose them. And they come down. And it's like, wow, we actually do live in a magnificent spot. But it wasn't until I actually stopped racing that I realized how fortunate we truly were. Right. Otherwise, it was just a place for us to put our money that, we were fortunate to make from racing went into this house. And it was kind of like, okay, it's a good place to save and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And then you stop and we call it our mini retirement we had, which I recommend to everyone, by the way, having like a 6-month, 12-month stint in your kind of mid-40s where you just go, don't do anything. Well, okay, don't do anything.
So before we go too far then, let's introduce who you are actually, because this isn't a triathlon podcast. There's probably a lot of people like, who's this Australian guy talking right now and how do you retire so early? But who is Greg Bennett for everybody listening?
The elevator pitch.
Yeah.
I think Greg Bennett's a retired professional triathlete that raced professionally for 28 years, representing Australia for most of those years. I am a dual citizen now, though, with the US. Probably the highlights of that career were kind of winning the World Series a couple of times.
So the World Series of triathlon?
Yeah, the ITU World Series, which basically is a global series where they accumulate your points and like any World Series. So I did that back-to-back in probably 2002, 2003. Towards later in my career, it became focused on the big professional races in the US. And at the time, the Lifetime Fitness chain of gyms had a big series with the world's biggest prize money. And I really focused heavily on that for a number of years and won that series a number of times. And probably 2007 being the biggest one of that, where if you won all five, they paid the $500,000 bonus. And that was kind of my year.
Didn't you get like a Hummer too?
Actually, Laura won the Hummer. So my wife, and this is the extension of who I am, I guess,
exactly.
is I'm married to Laura Bennett, who's a multiple Olympian and 4-time national triathlon champion and actually 4-time medalist at world champs. So she's quite a phenomenal athlete in her own right. And we got together in 2000, married in 2004. And so in 2007, we had one of those magical years. And we talked about this house a moment ago, but we bought this land and we really didn't have the money for it. And we bought this land at the beginning of 2007. And all of a sudden, 2007 just was the year that everything came together for us. I think we were meant to have this place.
You bought the land before.
We bought the land before, and I hadn't won my 5 from 5, and Laura hadn't won the big high V, the one-off race that year, which was, it was a 200 grand plus a Hummer, H3.
Do you think that made you guys run faster?
I think, you know what? I think subconsciously, I think we do that. And like anybody in business, I think sometimes you put yourself out on a limb, and it's amazing how, well, one, you may work harder, but also sometimes the stars align for you. And that's why I'm a big believer on putting yourself on start lines, because you just never know. And whether that's business or whatever part of your life, don't be afraid to go put yourself up against the big boys or big girls, because you never know. Life might just throw you a ball that you can hit and smash out of the park.
And that's the fastest way to improve, too. We were just talking about that even with business. I was saying with our business, we wouldn't know what we knew just going to college.
No.
You have to get in the ring.
Get dirty, exactly. And I think for us, that 2007 year then catapulted us, to 2008, 9, 10, 11. Laura in 2008 went to the Olympics and she finished 4th like I did in 2004. So we both have a 4th. And side note to that, I was commentating that Olympics for BBC. And so commentating your wife in 4th place, and that was tough. But it also, we have a very neutral house because of it. We both have our 4th place at the Olympics. For me, going into Athens in 2004, I'd been world number 1 in 2002 and 2003 and was probably the favourite to win and got injured at the start of 2004. And so that kind of ruined my Olympics. And I was talking to Hamish Carter the other day, who won the gold medal at 2004. And I said to him, in jest, but a little bit serious, if the Olympics had been 2 weeks later, I think I would have had you.
Why 2 weeks later?
Because I'd been training, I'd managed to skim together 10 weeks training after my injury. And I believed that I needed 12 weeks to be fully prepared. And I think I lacked confidence. I think...
Because you knew you weren't ready.
Not just that. I think I wasn't a natural born winner as an athlete. I think I loved sport. I loved pushing myself. But I didn't know how to win. And I really started learning how to win around that sort of end of 2006, start of 2007 year, where it wasn't hoping for a win. I started planning to win. And that was the dramatic difference for me in my career. It was a real turning point at 2007. I was 35 years of age. Most people are saying you should be retiring. But for me, I was just learning how to win. And from that sort of 2007 through to 2013, I kind of won 60, 70% of my races because I planned to do it. And don't get me wrong, I had the tools to make it happen as well, but there was a real confidence that went with it that I didn't have in my first 15, 16 years of my career, where I didn't realize that you had to put everything in place to make a win happen, to be successful. And like in business or anything else, it's kind of preparation. not a day before, not a week before, but months, years before, you know, and that's how I started planning my years and years in advance of going, okay, this race is going to occur like this, predicting how it's going to happen, and then training to be the better guy on that day to make a win happen.
This is interesting. You know, Brad and I are driving out to Outdoor Retail Show right now, and we stopped in Boulder last night. And so we interviewed Marinda Carfree and Tim O'Donnell, who are your good friends, and Mary lived down the street, and you. And suddenly my podcast is turning into kind of a triathlon podcast. But what's interesting is you guys are all very different. While you're all very successful, you all have different kind of approaches or mental games. And I think I've known you guys for a couple of years now, and kind of the last couple of years where you were competing, and kind of watching you guys transition to, call it coaching or advising or the stuff you're doing. But you and I have had a lot of discussions around the 1%, the little things that make a big difference, and how to win, like you just said. It's not just running the most miles or accumulating the most time in the pool. But your perspective is a little different than people because you're thinking about all the intrinsics.
Yeah. And I think it's very trendy now to use the term marginal gains, which the Sky Cycling team, you know, coined a number of years ago. And marginal gains, or one percenters or whatever, they do add up. And I think it's incredibly important. And I see a lot of athletes really focusing on the 1% in terms of my bike equipment or the outfit I'm wearing, or I see that 1% and the marginal gains being your overall well-being, your holistic approach. And the way both Laura and I approached the sport was, yes, we would focus on making sure we have the best team around us with the best equipment, the most high tech, everything we can.
But everybody's doing that.
Everybody's doing that.
So it's not really a gain, it's just keeping up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what we really found was the difference maker was our discipline and dedication to sleep and recovery. And when I mean recovery, I mean everything from sleep. We go to bed at 8, we wake up at 5. It became known around town, don't call the Bennetts after 8. And I take tremendous pride in that, because for me that means my competitors in the world know that the Bennetts are taking this to another level.
Yeah.
Our job is all encompassing. Our sleep, our hydration, our nutrition, all day, every day, all week, month, year. We don't stop. Even when we're on break, there's an element of, okay, turn the mind off a little bit, but hey, we still should keep moving a little bit, or we could still be working on biomechanics, or we still could be doing little things that aren't that exhausting for the brain. And trying to do that holistic approach.
Does that wear you out, or is that comforting in knowing that you're always thinking about it? Like, I wonder if you're at the highest levels and you're going to take 2 weeks off, if every day you're like, ugh, I'm falling behind.
No, I think it's more, you know, you create the routine. So it just becomes your thing, that your habit. And really once you have that habit, you're not thinking about it. That's just exactly it. That you actually, you're going to bed early and you're waking up early. And don't get me wrong, we have our nights out with Tio and Rin and, you know, our friends, and we have the good times as well. We're not giving up on life entirely. But I think in order to get the most out of yourself, and I don't even think it's limited to sport. I think high performance as a whole, whether you want to be a successful parent or successful in business, or that your sleep and recovery have to be priorities for you. Time for yourself has to be a priority. Time for your family has to be a priority. That's a holistic approach.
Right.
So every vacation we ever had was to our families for the last 18 years, every single one of them, because we made that a priority and we believe that's important.
On an earlier podcast, we interviewed Travis Haley, who's a Forest Recon Marine.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's not a pro athlete. I guess Marines are athletic in nature, but
he's a high performer.
It's mental and it's physical. Yeah. And he talked too about getting sleep, about eating. He travels a lot, like really focusing on eating well, no matter what, in the airports all the time. Like, all that stuff adds up. It's not just if you're trying to be a triathlete. It's just, I know for me, if I don't sleep well by Wednesday or Thursday, I'm not performing at the level I want to.
But that's what happens now, and I think you see it more and more. And I'm going to pick on American society. here, but coming from Australia, where the typical is 4 to 6 weeks off a year, where here it's 2 weeks, and then people pump their chest saying, I didn't even take my 2 weeks off.
Right.
Like I find Americans want to be busy. It's empowering to say I'm completely busy, or I pulled an all-nighter last night. Well, actually, I just hear that, one, you're not in control of your own life, right? Two, you're probably not that productive. And you're especially not that productive if you're turning up with lack of sleep. And the science-based methodology behind sleep will prove that pulling an all-nighter is like turning up slightly drunk, right?
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast with Joe Rogan, and he had a sleep scientist on, and he said, well, the saying practice makes perfect. It's actually practice plus sleep makes perfect. Yeah. And they tested people, and they had them do some skill that they had never done before. Yeah. And they tested people, they had them practice for an hour and then had them do it. And then they had people practice for an hour, go home, get a good night's sleep, and come back. And those people were multiples more effective.
Yeah, and it's been proven over and over again. And yet we still have this whole bravado thing about, I didn't get any sleep and I'm pushing through and I'm so busy and I'm so busy. And I'm like, I hear people say, I'm so busy, I'm so busy. I'm like, whoa, you really don't have control of your life. Mm-hmm. Because there's an element of how productive are you? That's the only question you need to be asking yourself. What did I get done today that needed to get done? How much time am I actually wasting running around trying to get things done that aren't getting done? And could that time be better spent,
Brad will attest to this. I always say productivity, not activity.
I love it. That's exactly it.
I don't care if you're in the office 4 hours. If you get 120% of what you were supposed to get done, enjoy your life.
And that's one of the biggest success stories. If you want to listen to high performers in business or sport, they're the ones that you hear this in sport. You say quality over quantity. It's in business. It's the same kind of methodology that we're talking about, being productive, not busy. And going back to recovery, one of my real favorite hobbies now is studying airlines, and not just airlines, but their seats within the different planes, the best plane to travel in. Like I can tell you, the new 787 is a better flight to take to Australia because you're traveling at 6,000 feet rather than 8,500 feet, that there's better humidity on that plane. Then I can tell you the best seat, that 6 C and D in the middle of business has a better leg room. And I told Tio and Rini for that, and I get a text from Tio on the way to Ironman Cairns. Oh, GB, you're right, it's a way better seat. But it's become my hobby because it came a hobby out of necessity, that we would only ever travel across oceans in business class. Mm-hmm. So how are we going to make that happen? We're triathletes. We're not Formula One drivers. We're not tennis players. Okay, so I became an expert on collecting miles with credit cards. Okay, I know, the Points guy and some of these great guys, bloggers out there that just give you so much information on how to travel well. And then I go and study all the airlines, and you got to be careful. You could fly United on their old 747 on the same route, but if you flew 3 hours later, you're on their new 787. Or the time of day that you're traveling, so I can minimize my jet lag when I get to China or when I get to Australia.
Dude, you need a members-only website with this information and monetized. This is fascinating.
It is out there, and I'm working a lot with a company, and that I've also learned a lot of this from over the last 5-6 years, and the name is Hinsa Performance, and they are based out of Switzerland. And Aki Hinsa, just a quick side note, he was an orthopedic surgeon from Finland, went to Ethiopia as a missionary, ends up meeting the runners over there, Haile Gebrselassie, and anybody that knows athletics would know that Haile Gebrselassie is one of the greatest marathoners and 10K runners of all time. He operated on Haile before the 2000 Olympic Games. And Haile, if you ever want to watch a running race, watch the 10K at the 2000 Olympic Games and watch Haile Gebrselassie versus Paul Tergat. So it's Ethiopia versus Kenya. Just a phenomenal race. Anyway, I won't even tell you who won now because I'll ruin it for you guys. Go check it out. Anyway, Aki moves back to Finland, and Mika Häkkinen, a Formula One driver from Finland, he hears about Aki and he hears about his holistic approach that he's using. And Aki starts working with Mika Häkkinen. Mika goes on to win a couple of world titles. Now Aki's got a real name for himself in the Formula One world. He's now working with McLaren and Mercedes and all these teams. And
this guy Aki started the company?
Aki started the company. And so we heard about this through a friend of ours, Dr. Luke Bennett, who ended up becoming Aki's right-hand man. Okay. And we love their holistic approach to sport. And
was this while you were
performance.
still competing, or
This was still while we were competing. Okay. So this is at the tail end of our career. So
is this when the 60 to 70% win ratio started kicking in?
No, this was actually after. And what we noticed was Aki was very good at putting what we were already doing into a teachable method. So he was a big believer. He has a core model. And the core is basically asking yourself 3 questions. Do you know who you are? Do you know what you want? And are you in control of your own life? Starting with that. And they're big, deep questions that you shouldn't be able to answer on the spot, that you really need to go away and think about because they're very deep. But then outside of that core, he's created this wheel. And any piece of this wheel that is not working, it's like a broken spoke. The wheel's not going to work. And so he talks about sleep, hydration, nutrition, biomechanics, physical activity, and body work, and putting all those systems in place. And so we were really keen to meet with Aki, and he's passed away actually a year or 2 ago with cancer. But we sat down, we met with these guys, and we said, look, we're living what you guys are preaching. We've been living this. Laura and I have been living this together for the last 15 years, and we'd love to get involved with your company. And there were some interesting conversations and back and forth there. And I actually remember saying to them, how are you guys living what you're preaching? Yeah. And this is another thing. And I didn't see that they were very busy. They were very busy, and they maybe weren't as healthy as they could be. And they said, yeah, we could be doing a better job on this. And this is where it's very easy for any of us to tell other people how to do it.
You see it all the time, whether it's preachers or motivational speakers. Absolutely. Or, they preach honesty and integrity, and then their lives are just in shambles.
Absolutely.
I always super gravitate to people that are just walking the walk.
Yeah, and I think that's where we wanted to be involved with this company, because we love what they're doing. And so since then, long story short, or long story long, we've done some contract work with them, and we hope to be doing more, whether it be with overseeing some of their drivers, because these drivers are pretty young, and it's a very, very high pressure sport, that Formula One. Well, we're talking billions of dollars, and every single member of those teams, they have 200 people in each team, from every mechanic and engineer, technician, to the driver themselves, and it's a high pressure performance that we're learning a lot from them, and we hope to be able to get involved more. And I think for us, I'm not a huge fan of motorsport, but I think to step out of triathlon and learn a bit in another sport, and then maybe come back to my true passion, could be a great education.
And bring that education to the sport. Yeah. So going back, you'd said that you suddenly were winning 60 to 70% of your races. What were some of the things, like I love the airline story, but what are the other things that you guys focused on that really made the marginal differences?
I think the big one was understanding the kind of training that I'd need to do to win. I think understanding visualizing. I'm a very deep visualizer. I can see things very, very clearly, to the point if you see me out on some of my running, you'll see me with my hands in the air, because I can hear the crowd, I can hear the commentators, and it becomes very, very real, very, very deep. I can live a moment, to the point that if I'm visualizing too much in January, February, Laura would always, say, Greg, enough with the visualizing, you're going to get fit at the wrong time of year. So I can get very, very deep in my head. And when I say that, what I would do for visualizing is in warm-up, I would decide the scenario that I'm going to do, and I would grab 5 or 6 of the different guys that I'm going to be racing, and I'd tell the story of how it's going to be in warm-up, and then I would go through it and make it happen. So if I'm doing 10 by 1 mile efforts running, each mile might represent a 1K in the race or something. And in that moment, I will be able to see or feel or hear those athletes around me. And I'd have my favorite athletes that I'd love
to compete against.
Yeah, that were the best to compete against. A lot of athletes are kind of boring the way they'd race. They'd sit and hope something would happen. That's kind of boring to me. Whereas someone like the 3-time world champion, Peter Robinson, young Australian guy, I always had him in my visualizing, because he'd just sprint at a random moment. And I used to love trying to match his sprints when I was already suffering. And actually in Minneapolis one year, which was the big Lifetime fitness race, and I think it was a couple of $100,000 for the win. And I didn't win this race. I came second, but Peter Robinson was in it. And in my visualizing, I'd always matched him 3 times. And then on the 4th time that he went for the effort, I was going to crush him. And it happened, like
No way.
to the exact moment, and I was almost laughing I was so excited. I was so excited that it was actually happening exactly how I'd visualized it for months or even years, that finally I was getting my time, that he sprinted away, I ran him back down, he sprinted away, he ran back down, and then his fourth sprint, I just went, okay, bury him. And it happened. And I remember putting my arm around him after the race going, thank you. You have no idea how many times I've visualized that it was such a joyous moment. I just loved it. But then, so visualizing was always very, very empowering for me.
And this is, you visualize while you're training, or do you lay in bed at night and close your eye? Both?
Both. I think not so much when I lie in bed at night, more on massage tables. So when I was getting my massage, I always put my head in the table, and my massage therapist, Marcus Mejias, who I worked with from 2007 all the way through, would be over here most afternoons getting massages. And he knew when I was ready to win, because he's like, I could even sense it through your body, basically, that your intensity when you were visualizing on the table. And it's funny because he would always, tap you on the back and go, "You're ready, Greg," Venezuelan accent. And okay, when he says I'm ready, I know I'm ready. It was almost that little reinforcement of like, okay, we're ready to go do this. And
this almost seems like monk level meditation in a way.
It is.
Like, how did you get there? When did you start? Like, so somebody's listening right now and they're like, this sounds good, I want to do this. Like, how do you start? Like, what's the process?
I think you start by firstly picking the event or the moment that you want
a goal
to be successful in. And this may be a year before, it may be months, and then deciding on how you want that event to turn out, with the likeliness of how that event could turn out. So knowing the characters that you're going to be up against and putting them in your visualizing, knowing, for me, I would study the weather, or I knew, okay, if I'm going to Minneapolis, for example, we were just talking about, I knew the course. I'd study it on Google Earth. I knew exactly every turn, how many 100 meters to every turn. I knew who was going to be turning up and who was going to be leading the swim, how fast the bike was going to be, who was going to be attacking off the front. I had all these scenarios. And then the run, which it often came down to, who was going to be doing what and where were they in what moment of the race. So creating the environment, the characters within it.
So it's almost not the first time you've seen it when it happens then.
Oh, not at all.
You've lived it and you've reacted.
You've lived it and reacted. And then it's so exciting when you pull to the front and you get to win. And you're like, wow, that actually turned out pretty likely, And I mean, don't get me wrong. There can be times when you go out to visualize and you're exhausted. We're training 30, 40 hours a week and you're tired. And, it's a Thursday and on Tuesday I've run a hard 20 mile, or on a Wednesday I've done. And anyway, Thursday morning is like, okay, I'm going to do a visualization workout with 10 by 1K efforts today. And you start warming up and you're like, oh my God, my legs are crap. Immediately what I'll do is say, the bike was the most powerful bike and hard bike ever in the world of triathlon. So now everybody's fatigued. I've evened the playing field just so it's not a negative day for me. Now I'm running on tired legs, but so is everybody. So I still end up winning. The key to good visualizing, you don't want to be coming second or third.
Right,
so I would visualize that I still get to win, but it's a slower day because that bike was so punishing, or the day was really hot or humid. So it's all in the setup to make sure it's always a positive outcome. And so that for me, that was a very powerful tool through my whole athletic career.
When I interviewed Rinny last night, she was talking about how Kona feels like home to her. And I mean, we've all been there. It's crazy humid, super hot. And she's like, I think a lot of people get off that plane and it feels like another monster that they have to overcome is just the climate. But for her, it felt like home.
And what a way to just be positive, right? I mean, for her to even just say that out loud is positive.
It's an advantage for her.
She's already ready for it. Even though there's deep down it may be like she's going through hell, she's already accepted that that's going to be home. So she's going to deal with it so much faster. Yeah, that's awesome. I like that. Yeah.
Who's the most impressive athlete that you've been around? Has there been anybody that you were just like, this guy has a dial? Because I think you're looking at the mental game as much as anything, maybe more than other people. Are there people that you think just do it really well that you're really impressed with?
Well, you got to break it down to the different types of athletes. Some athletes are just incredibly talented. God gave them a gift, and I've said to a lot of athletes, if they've gone and get their, I don't believe. Basically, you're given what God gives you, and some of us are given decent VO2 maxes. We were talking about it earlier, and some people just they didn't. And I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I hear young athletes say, "I want to be an Olympic champion," and we have a generation coming through that they all believe, if you dream and believe it, it'll happen. And don't get me wrong, we've just talked about visualizing. I get it. I want to be that positive reinforcement for you, but I'm also there has to be a level of realism that comes with it. So coming back to your question, there are some athletes that just have this God-given talent that is phenomenal. Guys like Javier Gomez, Alistair Brownlee, Jonathan Brownlee, they're incredibly talented. Plus, they have great work ethic. And plus, Gomez, I would say, is very professional. I think Alistair and Jonathan could be a little bit more professional. I think they enjoy life, and they're still young guys, and I think they could probably dial it up in terms of their overall well-being.
Which is scary because you're talking about an Olympic gold medalist.
2-time Olympic gold medalist. Yeah, no, I mean, we're talking about freaks of nature. These guys are incredible, and they work incredibly hard. But then you also have so you've got talent, you've got work, and then you have this sort of professionalism as well. And I think Jan Frodeno's leading the way right now and being the most professional and really making sure he's not cutting any corners, that, like I said earlier, he's living that holistic life where his nutrition, his sleep, his team around him is the best of the best. I have no doubt, Laura and I talk about, I think we were two of the most professional coming through, but we were that because we had the best team. We hunted the best team. We searched for them. And then I'd travel with my mechanic to the key races, and he was the best. His guy was too smart to be a bike mechanic, and now he's like one of the head guys in Hewlett and Packard. I mean, he decided to sell his bike shop going, what am I doing as a bike mechanic? And boom, somebody brought him in Hewlett and Packard, and away he's gone. This guy was bright, super bright. And I just used to love being able to have him look over my bike and get it ready for a race and just wheeling it into transition. And it might just be little bits on it that are just a little bit different that other athletes are like, oh. And even better, I'm walking in with my mechanic.
Yeah.
No one else in triathlon was doing that. Or my
so it's a bit of gamesmanship too.
Oh, Joe Santos was the great, and USA Triathlon were using him, and I stole him for myself. Like, that's how I met him. I mean, he was that good that my salary, Laura and I would always break down our salary and go, look, 15% back to reinvestments, 15% to travel, 15. We had it broken down, so it wasn't. I'd get a massage every afternoon. Not once a week, not twice a week, every afternoon during key big push phases. Marcus Matthias would be here, the best massage therapist in the world. He works on T.O. Rinnie, Chrissy Wellington. He's a magician. We love the guy. Alex Keith, our chiropractor from Florida, I met him back in 2005 when I was thinking about retiring. I think, and just started working with him, and he got me back running, and he saved my career more than once.
That's an interesting topic, just the reinvestment into yourself. I think a lot of people are always worried kind of about how much they're putting away maybe in their bank account, but maybe that's nearsighted.
Absolutely.
Right? Because maybe you make 20% more for 3 years, but then you whether it's mental fatigue or body breakdown, but you don't have 5 more years to do it. Can you talk a little more about that? Like,
absolutely. And I think, we've even touched on it with your business and other businesses out there. You got to firstly believe in yourself, before you, and believe
maybe blindly a little bit.
Well, a little bit, but it's like we were saying earlier, the stars can align and away you go. And then everybody are like, oh, wow, look how successful you are. That must have come really easy. You're like, well, no, you don't see the 10,000 hours, before.
Yep.
No, for us, it was always if you got to pay to play. And if you want to be up against the big boys, you got to be prepared to go the extra yard. And for us, we like to look big picture thing. I don't like looking at, $100 going out each day feels like a lot of money. But if I say, look, we're spending $30,000 a year on body work, just put it aside. Laura, don't even look at it. Or $30,000 a year to travel. Don't even look at it.
Just treat it like taxes.
It's already gone.
Yeah.
And that made it easier for us. And so then I could travel with my car, Alex Keith, and bring him to the key races, and he'd work on me from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning. So every part, we were ready. I'd go to every race knowing I was ready to race. There wasn't anything wrong with me. And that was huge. I'll never forget, and this is a little side note, but along the... so the final race in 2007, I'd won 4 from 4, and I had to win the 5th. If I didn't win the 5th, I'd still win the series and I'd make about 100 grand. If I win the 5th race, it's more like 550,000. So it's a lot of money for a triathlete, a lot of money.
A lot of money for anybody.
So what I'd done is about 8 weeks before the final race, right after I'd won LA, the 4th race, I wanted to go with Laura to Beijing for her Olympic trials. I wanted to support her. She'd missed out on 04. She'd missed out in 2000. She'd been going really well. And I'm like, you know what? I want to be there and support. The trip over and back, I just got really tight and my glutes locked up. Laura, by the way, qualified for the Olympics at that race, so that was great. Mm-hmm. And I was injured. I couldn't run. So for the 6 weeks going into the final race, I'm like, oh man, I can't run. This is over. And all of a sudden, the weight came off my shoulder a bit. The pressure kind of left, going, oh, well, it's been a good year. You've done well. Forget it. And Alex Keith, my chiropractor, said, Greg, fly to Florida. Let's get going. Let's work on it. First thing he did, he took me to a shooting range.
A gun range?
Yeah. I'd never fired a gun or anything. As an Australian, it's just not a thing, right? It's only in America. And I was sweating in my hand. I was terrible. I was terrified of this thing that can kill people. But it was the best thing for me.
Why?
It was just such a release. I don't know if
you just completely took your mind off.
It took my mind off it. It was an outlet. I don't know. There's something empowering about. I'm not supporting guns here, but it was just empowering to shoot a gun in a range, and did that. And then he worked on me for a whole week. I stayed down there and. Just every single moment in between clients, I just sit in his office all day, and in between clients, he'd work on me, and he got me to the point that I was jogging before the final race. And then I flew him over to Dallas, which was the final race, and he said, Greg, I also have another friend who's a chiropractor, and I'd like her to come and work on you as well. So he stayed in the room with Laura and I, and at 2 a.m. that morning, the other chiropractor...
Why 2 a.m.?
Because I had to get on the bus to go down to the race at 5, and we just needed to get the body moving. And so they both Camille, her name is, I know a family and I'll come back to me. They both worked on me and treated me, and then I hopped on the bus with everybody. I didn't drive in the car on the way down with them. I was like, no, face your fears head on. I want you to sit on the bus with all the other athletes and just enjoy this moment. And all the eyes were on me, because it was a big moment in our sport that somebody was going to make possibly this kind of money. And I think they were all ready to negotiate.
I was going to say, everybody approach you and be like, if I'm out there, I'll slow up if you give me 50 grand.
No one did. And all credit to them. And I know Lifetime Fitness, they'd insured this money, but they didn't want to lose the insurance.
Bram was sweating a little bit.
Yeah. And so they brought in athletes from Europe, and it was a really solid field. And I was like, you bastards.
They were trying to beat you.
Yeah, I think there was an element, of course. But it also made for better racing if I did pull it off. And I remember just going down to the race, and I was so relaxed because I think I'd already been injured. I'd shot guns. I'd got up at 2 a.m, and I remember myself saying, this is like a touch football game with your mates. And this is what I just kept telling myself to keep myself relaxed. This is a touch football with your mates where every now and then somebody's going to tackle you a little harder than they should. That's all that's going to happen. There's going to be some big hits that hurt, and just be ready for them. But otherwise, this is just fun. Fun with you, mate. I knew everybody. I know I've been racing these guys for 20 years. I knew the big hitters. I knew their personalities. I knew it was going to take. I got off the bike within that lead group. No one knew that I'd been not running for 5-6 weeks. Only I did. And I thought, well, you know what? Let's just fake it. And I sprinted that first mile, and I think my first mile was like a 4:30. I absolutely had no fitness for it at all. I remember going past Matt Reed, who had the lead off the bike by about 30 seconds, and going, wow, I went past him really quick. Yeah. And I got to 5K completely blown, like I was smashed. But because I'd been winning all year, they kind of gave it to me. They started running for second. And a little side note to that story was, like I said, I Google Earth every race. I knew every corner. And I called the race director and I said, the run's 9.6K. I need it to be 10K. This is 2 months previous. Because at that time I was up against a guy by the name of Craig Walton.
I mean, your preparation is so dialed that you're calling a race director to alert him that his course is too short.
He laughs. He's like, yeah, it's the Greg Bennett thing. It's like, mate, it's too short. It's going to be 10K. So he added another street block in Dallas and made it exactly 10K. Well, I remember running past where it was meant to be 9.6. I go, damn it, Greg, because I was now suffering. If you lose it because of your stupid phone call, because I was thinking I'd need every step, because in LA, Craig Walton had got off the bike 3 minutes in front of me, annihilated me in the swim bike. And I caught him with like 200 meters to go and just won that race by like 7 seconds. And I was like, I don't want that to happen again. And we need to make sure this race is 10K. I'm the runner in the field. And I was like, yeah. So yeah, that was a really special day in my past.
What's it feel like crossing a finish line knowing you just made $500,000?
Yeah, relief, to be honest.
Probably.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, I mean, I think I was bawling my eyes out. I was kind of pathetic, but I think it was relief. It's joy, of course, and I think that unexpected joy is truly one of the greatest feelings in the world. Like I've won races where I've kind of gone in very, very confident, going, I'm going to win this. And you're almost running down the finishing chute, and there might be a couple of thousand people in this. And you're kind of like you're putting your hand in the air when you're expecting to win. You put your hand in the air, you go, and you're kind of faking it, going, yeah, I'm really, really happy, but you kind of knew you were going to. Yeah. Which didn't happen a lot in my career, but when it did, it was kind of like you're playing it up a little bit. But these wins where they happen, where it was unexpected. So for me, that Dallas race, or 2011 High V, which was another 200-gram payday win, and I kind of just was trying to get a few bike preems, which if you were leading the race at a certain point, they'd pay you $5,000 or whatever. So I was like, oh, and I managed to break away, and then I get off the bike with a 50-second lead. I'm like, oh, crap. And then they get within about 20, 30 seconds of me that I felt pretty good the final lap. And anyway, High V was spectacular. They'd built a big grandstand, so probably, 10, 20,000 people in the finishing chute. And I remember that one, it was really special because it was so unexpected. Now I was almost 40. It was 39 and a couple months shy of 40, and I was like, I thought my big successes were maybe behind me, and so that one was really special because it was like, wow. And then that crowd just running along the blue carpet. I look at photos and I'm like, what was I even doing? Like my hands are it's not kissing the crowd nicely. It's like, and because your body is over, you don't even remember it. You've heard the expression, the crowd carried you. Well, that's what happens, I think, when it's unexpected, and that's what those kind of races happen to me, very much so. But High V different to that final race in Dallas, where it was more relief. There was a lot. I didn't realize how much underlying pressure there was. Like I've said, going to the gun range, and I was kind of, but I think at the end of it was just like, whew, I did it. I'm done.
Did you buy anything super frivolous after that?
We put on a couple of big parties. One here in Boulder. One we paid the night out down there in Dallas. I really wanted to make sure the team. But no, like I mentioned very earlier in the podcast, we bought this land that we couldn't afford. So basically most of it went into paying for this house. But I'm not a really frivolous spender anyway. No, like it was kind of, I had everything I needed in my life to be happy, and no, but it's also one of the reasons we can be sitting in this house. And then Laura that year had also won the High V for that year, and so all up it was a fantastic year for.
It was a big year.
A couple of triathletes, where it's big money in sport, but it's not big money in sport, if you know what I mean. Like it's
so. I sit here and I listen to you and to Tim and to Rennie, and that's your normal life. But, and you probably realize and accept this, but for somebody like me, that's it's a bit far-reaching to even visualize winning a race like that. But there's a lot of us that do triathlons, or we run, or we do 5Ks or marathons. And going back to your marginal gain stuff, how would you coach somebody like me, or a guy that has a family and a business and just wants to perform better, and they feel overwhelmed with stuff? Like how, if somebody's going to come to you and say, Greg, like give me 2 or 3 things that you think would really make a difference for me. Like what would those be?
Well, I think like I touched on before when I was referencing the Hinsa model, firstly asking yourself some honest questions. I do think asking yourself, who do you think you are is very profound. And then really, what do you want? Because
so what kind of an answer about like who do you think you are? Like what's the?
Well, I don't think it should be. Well, I'm a dad with 2 kids and I work as an accountant and I enjoy 5K. I think you got to go a little deeper than that. I think it's for me, I need to find some time alone in silence every now and then, and I need that time. It's important for me to have clarity in my life. I need to make sure that I prioritize my family to the point that I'm not working more than prioritizing my family. You know, people will say, the number one thing in my life is my family. But you spend 100 hours a week at work and you spend 10 hours with your kids on a weekend. That doesn't add up. You're not being honest. You know, your priority is your work. Your family's second. Don't lie to yourself. Because otherwise, if you're lying to yourself, it's just a vicious circle. You're never going to actually make the changes needed. The second one of what do you want? And Laura helps a lot of people with the nutrition side of things, and we've realized nutrition on its own doesn't work. If you don't desperately want to change and want to change every aspect of your life, losing weight or trying to be a better athlete or whatever, it doesn't happen. You have to be prepared to make the changes across the board. Mm-hmm. So if somebody says to me, Greg, I want to run the New York Marathon and I want to do it in so-and-so time. Do you really? Do you really? And what does it mean to you? And starting to really weigh up what truly means to you. What really do you want in life? When the fact is, what I really want in life is to drink a glass of wine every single night with my wife and maybe a couple of friends on the weekend. That's what I love. Fine. Don't change, but don't kid yourself that you want something else more than what you truly love.
So I was a musician for 8 years of my life. And for many of those years, Michael Bland was kind of our mentor and our drummer, but he was Prince's drummer in the New Power Generation, and played with Michael Jackson and the Dixie Chicks and all these guys, right? And he was older, and he's a mentor, and he would always say a similar thing. He's like, people always tell me they want to be rock stars, but what they want to do is go home and play video games.
Yeah, of course.
And he's like, people get exactly what they want.
Yes, exactly.
He's like, the people that if what they really want is to go home and play video games, that happens.
Yeah.
And the guys that really want to be famous, it's totally blinders on focused, and a lot of them get there.
But you're doing it for yourself too. We see a lot of athletes in the Olympic process. I ask, why are you doing it? Why do you want to be an Olympian? Most people can't even answer you that. Are you doing it for yourself? Or are you doing it for your mum and dad? Are you doing it for the town you live in? Are you doing it for the Stars and Stripes or the Southern Cross? What are you really doing it for? Because if you're not doing it for yourself, first and foremost, you're not going to make it. It's too hard, it's too brutal, and there's too many other athletes in the world that are doing it for themselves and love it. And they love the pain, they love all about it. And that's a very honest question to start with. Don't go down the Olympic pathway unless it's something that you truly want. Not because your mum and dad want it, because you want it. Mm-hmm. For me, it was in 08 Olympics. I was busy enjoying the US big money series like we talked about. 06, 07, I was winning the series. Come 08, I'd hardly done any ITU World Cups or World Series races, which you need to do to collect points to go to the Olympics. But I turned up at a race in Australia in April called Mooloolaba, or March it was, which is a beautiful town in Australia, Mooloolaba, one of my favourite races in the world. And it was a World Cup. The Australian Federation gave me a start. I ended up coming fourth. That night, I didn't even know it was an Olympic qualifier for Australia. Australians put me on the Olympic team. I was like, shit. Don't get me wrong. I was kind of torn. I was like, wow, incredibly, to be put on an Olympic team is always amazing, right? It's unbelievably awesome. But I'm also like, well, how's that going to affect my 08 year where I want to repeat what I did in 07? And I love that non-drafting. It's a different style of racing. I love the style of racing I'm doing in the US. And oh my God. Oh, and then it's not just a matter of turning up to the Olympics then. It's like there's a lot of processing that goes on for the Olympics. And it's a week here and a week there and doing this with the team and doing this with the team. Oh, shit. But I do it, and don't get me wrong, I'm not begrudging it. And my family's all in, they're excited because they're going to go to Beijing, and Laura's already made it, so both of us are going to the Olympics. And I'm like, okay, yep, it's going to be awesome. And then what happens is, the way that works in the Olympics is, I don't know if it's still the same, but the top 8 countries would have 3 athletes. So the ranking of your country would get 3 athletes, and then the next 8 countries would get 2 athletes, and then singular after that. Australia slipped out of the top 8. Russia came through, and that's a whole nother story. But Australia slipped out of the top 8.
I can't imagine.
And suddenly I get a call, Greg, you're off the Olympic team. I'm like, oh, God. And it didn't bother me. But it's a phone call to mum and dad. It's, telling everybody else that was all excited about it. And I wasn't even the one that was really that hyped about it. I was excited, but I'd already done the Olympics. I'd come fourth. I'd had a good effort and I'd had a good show and I'd enjoyed it, but I didn't have to do it again. And so, that all happened. And then I got the job BBC commentating and stuff. And that was actually a lot of fun for me and something I'd enjoy doing a little bit more of in the future. But it was, that roller coaster I didn't need in 2008. And that actually, I lost the first race of that series in Minneapolis with a sprint finish with Andy Potts and Simon Whitfield, but then I went on to win the next 4. And I really do feel like that upset.
Was that another $500,000 purse that you would have won?
No, they got rid of the insurance that year. It was still, I think, by winning that year, it was still a good 6-figure payout, but it wasn't that good. But I mean, and look, had I gone to the Olympics, I was in really good shape. I beat good mate Simon Whitfield in New York 3 weeks before by about 2 minutes, and then he went and got the silver medal at the Olympics. So I knew I would have been a fair player come 2008, but it wasn't my Olympics. It was Laura's Olympics. It was her first time around at her, and I don't mean that to sound like I'm being like such a wonderful husband. More just it was her time to have her energy into the Olympics, and I'd had my turn in 2004 when she'd supported me into that, and then So the Olympic, going back to the original, what we were talking about, do you really want to go to the Olympics, and is it really for you? Be honest about it. Do you really want to be fit? Do you really want to go do 5Ks every weekend? It hurts. It's uncomfortable. Be honest with yourself. Yeah.
So that was one of the 3 things, right? You said, know who you are.
Yes, know who you are. Know what you want.
Know what you want.
And then, are you in control of your own life is the final one. And basically, you could be self-employed, but is the business running your life? Have you lost control, and now is the business dictating everything about your life? Or have you got control of the business? Have you got control of where you want it to go? Is it, and these are, you will have control of your life one day, and then the next day you won't. So these things are all moving the whole time, Like you could ask me today, Greg, do you have control of your life? Well, yeah, I do. Today I'm in a good place. Ask me in a week's time, and I could be like, oh shit, my life's turned upside down.
Right.
But they're just honest questions to just keep coming back to, I think. Are you in a job that's controlling you too much? Are you doing what you love? We've all lost loved ones, friends, and all sorts of things, and they're often great reminders to go, hey, life's short.
It's probably okay too to accept that not every day you're going to be in control.
No.
I think anybody that's pushing on the fringe or trying to do something that's outside of just the expected or the normal is going to have pretty high highs and pretty low lows.
Yeah.
I mean, we go through that with our company where, holy crap, we're on Shark Tank and my phone almost melted from the number of orders coming in and the notifications.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And then a couple of months later, you might have a day where there's no orders, and and it feels like the sky is falling. But you have to just kind of like holistically look at where you're going and make sure you're heading in the right direction holistically.
You need those lows. You need to have those tough times. That only make the good times so much better.
And what I've found is in the lows, it really makes you re-examine everything and make sure you're doing everything right.
Yeah.
I think we always find those incremental gains in the lows.
Absolutely.
When you're selling tons of stuff, nothing else really matters. Sales fixes everything.
Yeah.
But if you don't have tons of sales, then it's like, okay, well, where do we save money?
Yeah.
How do we get this part cheaper? How do we become more efficient in marketing? And then you dial all those things in, and then when it ramps up again, you're doing even better than you were the last time when you thought you were at a high.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, a little side note, I had, I don't know what religious group they were at the front door. And I was like, you know what, I grew up in a fairly religious family, and I understand a lot of these debates. And so I was like, you know what, I've got time. So I stood at the front door.
No way.
And I was like, they said, and if we could get rid of everything bad in the world and everything was amazing all the time, every time. I said, well, I don't think God would want it that way. He hasn't created the bad and that without some, and I don't know the expression, but without some thought, because the whole point is we're given these challenges to overcome them. That's what makes life special. Mm-hmm. It's not about every day walking in a rose field going, isn't this just the most amazing, blissful day all the time? No, because then you don't see it at all. all you see is a curtain of red. You don't see an individual rose. You don't see it. Whereas when you go through the tough times, and then you're like, wow, that was really, really special.
Well, and I go to church every week, and a lot of times what they talk about is people are closest to God when they're suffering, because then they need some help and they're reaching out. Yeah. When everything's good, it's like, I got this.
Yeah, of course.
But once you're falling on your face, you kind of start grasping for whatever you can to help you make sense of it or to climb out of it.
And don't get me wrong, I believe we still should take ownership of ourselves, and attitude is something we can wake up every day and be positive and be somebody that's going to help somebody every day, and that's more fulfilling than what you have. It's what you give, that old expression, and those things do make you feel better. And I think that's where the church is good for a lot of people. It's like, it's not what you have, it's what you can give. And I think the church is a great place for people to learn how to give and be better people. But my family, my brother's a chaplain, and we went through some tough times these past few years, and I'm probably the least of the religious side of all of them, but my attitude remained always positive and upbeat, and something, it takes a lot of energy, but it was something I surely work on. And I sometimes feel like Christians expect God just to pick up the pieces for them. And I'm like, no, God's given you the tools for you to pick up the pieces.
Well, there's that saying, God helps those who help themselves.
Exactly.
And I don't know if that's exactly biblical, but I do believe in that. I feel like you just can't sit in your hands and expect things are going to get better.
No.
Like God's given you the mental aptitude or the skills to put the work in to make it happen.
Absolutely. And
I mean, if you obviously are predisposed to be an endurance athlete, but if you didn't put the training in, it's not going to happen.
No, of course not. And the fact is, I love the work. I love that feeling of hard training, and
that makes you more fulfilled, and makes it more rewarding.
But it's also, God gave me a gift that I actually feel comfortable sitting at 175 heart rate. Like I enjoy that threshold of.
That's one of us.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I got tested when I was like 18, and they're like, Greg, your VO2 is pretty good. But it's your ability to sit at your VO2 for a long period of time that's going to make you successful if you want to do this. And that's when Australian cycling were recruiting athletes. And I was already into triathlon for a couple of years. And I was like, I don't want to be a cycler. And that's when they got O'Grady, McGee, McEwen all went through that cycling program at that time. And the 4,000, the pursuit on the track was what they wanted me. I'm like, I don't want to do cycling. I love swing cycling and running. And so I was very good at that 4 to 7 minutes, but it took me a long time to get good at 2 hours, and never good at the Ironman. That was never me.
Too far for you?
That was too far. Well, it's for me, mentally and physically. I didn't enjoy being stuck in second gear all day. For me, Ironman is who can rev at second gear really, really well. And maybe the best in the world, like a Jan Frodeno, can go into third gear every now and then. No, I like the fifth
Or Rinny's
gear.
ability to just mow people down.
She's just
crazy.
Well, biomechanically, just watching somebody like her is just like watching a perfect dance. I'd rather go watch Rinny run than go to the ballet. I just think her running form is the perfect dance. I think Craig Alexander, I think his running form was the perfect dance. I didn't have that biomechanic, that ability to hold it like they did, that perfect form. It really is for me, I think running is the most pure form of dance.
I agree.
Yeah.
As somebody who really works at that, watching somebody that's natural, it's beautiful. It looks like they're floating.
And that's, don't get me wrong, you can see bad running mechanics also go very, very fast.
True.
But when you see pure mechanics, it is lovely to watch.
So these guys that came to your door, was it Jehovah's Witnesses?
I think it was, yeah. I didn't want to spell
Did they give you a Watchtower pamphlet?
I don't know. I think by the end, I think I might have. They may not be religious anymore. I think I won that. They were lovely. They were a bit older.
I have this crazy story. I'll tell it. I talked about Michael Bland earlier, who played for Prince. Well, we were rehearsing one day, and we were driving home. Mike doesn't drive, so I was giving him a ride home, and he got a call from Prince to go to Paisley Park to record. And Mike said, dude, come with. Let's see how long you can hang.
Yeah.
He's like, just be my drum tech. So I'm like, cool. So pull up. I had this little Jeep, I got his drums out. And we walked in. And I remember walking in the hall. And everybody knew Mike. He was part of the band. And I was with him. And we came in. And I remember Prince coming around the corner in a 3-piece red velvet suit with these high heels that lit up when he walked, like those old LA Gears.
Oh my God.
He's like, Michael, brother, come on in, And I was like, holy cow, this is like the Dave Chappelle skits. I'm living it, And we go in and we came around the corner and Sonny Thompson was there. Sonny was the bass player in the band and one of Mike's best friends. And so, as I was working with Mike would work with other groups, not a small recording studio. So Mike would always have his buddies come in and play parts. And so I knew Sonny. And right away, Sonny's like, hey, man, how's it going? And Sonny had known Prince since high school. So I think Prince is like, okay, guy's cool. He can hang out.
Oh, wow.
I thought I was getting kicked out right away. And we were in there for a while. We talked about, he had us all sit down. Prince was very short. And he would stand up. So you're always kind of looking up to him. It was all psychology, right?
Wow.
And I'll never forget, he's holding this cup of tea on a saucer and then drinking it with a little teaspoon, just sipping. and this piece of velvet suit and asking us these, talking to us. And we were talking about iPods. And I remember him being like, what's Mr. iPod's name? And I'm like, Steve Jobs. He's like, that's right, Mr. Jobs. And then he'd just take like 3 sips from his spoon. And I'm just sitting there like in the principal's office. You don't say anything unless spoken to. And,
well, that would have been hard for you.
Well, it was just kidding. No, it was crazy, man. Yeah. I'd heard enough stories where I'm like, I wonder when I'm going to get in trouble and get kicked out. Yeah. But back to the Jehovah's Witness thing. All of a sudden, Prince goes, let me ask you guys a question. What's the average life expectancy of a brother these days? And I'm like, I'm not touching that.
No,
question,
right, yeah, run for the hills.
I think Mike said, I don't know, 45. I can't remember the number he gave, 45 or 48 or something. And Prince stops for 10 seconds and he goes, what Michael said was, I think they say 45 or 48. And Prince goes, Michael, who are they? Who says you can't live forever?
Oh my God.
And I'm like, what? That's awesome. He goes, I have something I want you guys to read.
Oh no.
And this person comes over with these pamphlets, and I still have them. He gave us each 2 copies of The Watchtower.
Really?
And he talked to us. He basically kind of preached to us for several minutes.
He was a JW. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Through Larry Graham, who Larry was the bass player for Sly and the Family Stone, and became Prince's kind of spiritual mentor or whatever. As I understand it, I may be telling us a little bit wrong, but Larry was there that night later, and I know that they were very close. And he got very into Jehovah's Witness.
This is a far more interesting podcast, by the way. I think we're going to flip this around. I'm going to interview you now. That's
but anyway, that's the one time where I've had a pretty crazy interaction, and it was Prince.
Yeah.
All the way up the food chain, right?
Yeah.
This guy.
So that was in Minneapolis, right?
This was in Minneapolis at Paisley Park, which was his recording studio.
Yeah, of course.
And then just as, he was like going way down this wormhole, and suddenly he's like, let's go in the studio. And that was it. And then we hadn't recorded for a while. But
so you recorded with Prince? I
didn't play any instruments, but I was in the room.
You're in there. You're a part of it.
I was. I could tell more of that story. It was pretty. I'll tell one more piece because this is pretty interesting. I got Mike set up in the drums, and he's like, "Dude, just go in the sound room and where the console is, and just hang out, and see what happens. If you got to wait in the car, wait in the car. I don't know. I'll be done when I'm done." I'm like, "Okay, cool." And Mike and Sonny share a brain, and Mike starts playing a beat, and drummers do this so the engineer can start getting tones and getting the balances so you're not clipping, and and then Sonny starts playing, and then those two just feed off each other. They are the best in the world, and they got this cool drum and bass thing going. And I'm just sitting in the studio, and this guy Ian is getting everything dialed in and patching things in and making sure all the mics are right, and he knows which sliders are on. And Prince appears out of the corner. And he's very short, and he kind of leans up on the console, but it's kind of high, and he put his elbow on there and had his hand like in his chin in his hand, and kind of tapping his lips with his finger. And he was listening to those guys play, and I'm sure he was like, "Ooh, what can I play on top of this?" And I'm sitting kind of behind the console, and to the right of me is his famous like cloud guitar, that white one. And it's just sitting there, like with a light. It's like I swear they put it under the light. It's all very Prince, it almost felt like it was floating. And in his super low Prince voice, he goes, "Ian, roll the guitar." And Ian's getting the drums and bass dialed, and there's some other guys in the room. And suddenly he like totally shifts gears and is like, "Ooh, I do not have the guitar ready." And I could see him quickly trying to patch it. And Prince does this 90-degree turn, takes 2 steps, 90 degrees to the left, and takes like 6 steps to this guitar. Looks at it for a second, grabs it with one hand, grabs the bass with the other hand, the bass of the guitar, and like does this motion where like the guitar strap flies up and like lands perfectly on him. And there's a pedal, like the tuner pedal. He touches it, strums, no sound. Touches it again, strums, no sound, because Ian didn't have it set up yet. Flips it off, sets it down, and just says, "There will be no guitar tonight," and walks out of the room. Oh my God. I was like, what?
Oh my God.
And right as he's going out the door, he stops And without turning his body, he just turns his head back and kind of looks over his shoulder. And he goes, roll the keys. And he walks back across the room and sits down next to me. And I'm talking less than a foot, elbows to elbows. I'm on the couch and the piano's next to me. And he just sits there for like 15 seconds, which felt like 5 minutes, with his hands hovering over the keys, not touching them. Most people sit down and see what the tone is. They kind of play a chord. They think about it. Like he was doing the math in his brain. And kind of put his hands over. And Tommy Barbarella is a good friend of mine. Tommy was their keyboard player in the band. Tommy is world class, amazing, right? And I remember thinking, I wonder if he's as good as Tommy.
Yeah.
Is he just going to play some like kind of whole notes or what's again? And he played keyboard in a way that very few in this world, I think, can. I mean, just world
a creative
class.
Genius. Truly.
And just went off.
So that's why his brain was so different in so many ways, because the creativity of it was just so channeled. I mean,
he was a businessman too. I mean, when he wasn't at the top,
you can't have everything, can you? That's bullshit.
But he kind of did. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but in the UK, he put his album in every copy of a newspaper when he had this new album come out, which pushed him to the top of the charts.
Wow.
Like he was like thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, people aren't buying CDs at stores anymore. So I will sell them to the newspaper who has 8 million people distribution. And in one day, I'm going to sell 8 million copies.
Some people's brain, their chemistry is just that much different that they can actually think outside of the box like that, though. Like you call it business, but it's his brain was obviously very, very different. Like as a jock or, as an athlete, I can't tell you how many times Laura and I look at all these creative people with such envy. And I know people look at, I'd love to be fit. I get it. But to be able to have a brain that is so creative and be able to think so differently, it really is truly amazing. And yes, he's passed away, but what a gift that he's left.
But do you have, we were talking before the podcast, you have a spreadsheet in case you win the lottery. Broken down.
I'm a planner.
But that's a different kind of
my weakness or my gift is also my curse. So I'm a planner, and so is Laura. So yeah, I play the lottery, but I want to be ready. So I have a spreadsheet that I've spent years writing. Now it's broken down into percentages and of what I'll do with every cent of it. And I actually, and you may want to know, I have a friend list on this, an ABC group of friends that are all getting paid. And the initial party, so basically it starts with the initial couple of days is all business. There's actually not much of a celebration.
If you win a lottery.
When
you win the lottery.
Yes.
Sorry, when.
And so it starts off, and then it's basically one of my friends will get a phone call to be in Vegas within a 24, 48-hour window. All flights paid, staying at the best place in Vegas, and we'll be there for 3 or 4 days. And that's going to be the party.
Does this happen if it's above a certain amount of money or just?
Yeah, well, I only play once it gets to a certain amount.
Which is
because the math doesn't make sense. 50 million in my pocket. Otherwise, it's not worth playing.
So like what the lottery has to be to put 50 million away based on taxes and.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I've broken all of that down, and then what I do on this initial celebration is everybody comes in to my room at a different time, and I give them all a check. Part of the responsibility of the check is I want to know how you spend it.
You're going to have so many friends after this podcast comes out.
So the story is, if I give you 100, 200,000, I want to hear how you spend it. You can be boring if you want. Ideally, I want to hear great stories, because then I put that's a story.
Wait, do you want people to do charity work, or do you want them just to like...
You want. It's up to you.
I want to go climb Mount Everest.
If I'm giving you, depending on where you are on my list of friends. So say...
I'm not going to ask you if I'm on the list because I don't want to
you're on the list, buddy. You're on the list.
I am?
Yeah. It's a pretty big list.
Yeah, you're number 3,462.
No, but it works out. It's actually a lot of fun. And even if on the list it goes down to you're only giving 20 or 30 grand, it can be life impactful for some people. Meaningful. And then, like my brother would be on top of the list getting maybe $1 million or something. His is bigger, but everybody has their part. And I just think the amount of joy to just give out checks to everyone. And don't get me wrong, I'm still going to get some cool things for myself and some investments and do it right. And then I think you've got a great kind of almost episode TV show or book or something that comes out of how people...
That's smart. You make a TV show out of
this. And how people really enjoy spending their money. And if you want to give it all to charity, go ahead. If you want to put it in your house or you want to just give it to an investment, okay, kind of boring. You won't be a feature part of the story. But or if you just want to go blow it because you want to go climb Everest and you want to do it with 10 guides, or great, I paid for it. That's awesome. So
I've always thought about that too. If I won the lottery, where it would be fun just walking around with a checkbook.
The wrong way of saying it, mate. You got to believe. My grandpa won the lottery. It's
really?
in the family, yeah. He won it in 1980. It was a shared win in Australia.
How much?
I think they were sharing 2 million, and it was like 3 people. But back in 1980, I think it was a substantial enough for him to buy a yacht and a house.
So what's your one big spend for yourself?
My one big spend is the spending on all my friends. That's the I think the greatest joy.
It says a lot about you, I think.
No, it doesn't. I think it is completely selfish, because the stories that you're going to get and you know what it feels like to give. It's way better, way better than receiving. You know, the joy you have. I mean, honestly, I know that sounds very cliche and kind of, but it is. It's so much more fun.
It is.
And so don't get me wrong, we'll probably have a nice house somewhere and whatever. And then at the end of that Vegas trip, we'll go on a cruise for 2 weeks and put our feet up. And that'll be more of just like, okay, that was pretty awesome. Yeah, with the family. And so, yeah, it's all written out. It's all ready to go. I've got the lawyer's number on speed dial, because you need to have the accountants and lawyers and everybody ready. And then I've even, you've got to have it broken down for taxes and everything. So that's I've done the homework on how much tax would be taken out, and because you need to know exactly how much you're going to be paying. And then, it's a lot of fun, though. I recommend it to anybody. Get a spreadsheet, get your Excel out, and say, when I win the lottery, and have it as a moving number depending on how much you're going to make, and break it down into percentages.
It's all formulas, so you can put a sum in and just watch it all filter
I can change it to 200 million, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're making more than 5,000. You're making,
Wait, only 5,000?
Well, it depends on the list. Depends on how well this interview's received.
Dude, I love it. I wouldn't expect to be on any list anyway, but that's amazing.
You kidding? You got to invite the people that you know are going to have a good time,
I think we'd have a good time.
Yeah, we would. And so...
Well, dude, we got to do this again when we'll do the podcast from Vegas.
We can do it right there, yeah. Make sure we're not too hungover.
We'll just have the mics in the room and just have people come in one at a time.
Wouldn't that be fun?
And you could hand them the money and say, you got to tell me in 30 seconds what you're doing with this.
No, you don't have to tell me that. Yeah, no? But you got to give people a chance. But it's the adventure of it,
I feel like you'd make all your money back in a TV show.
Yeah, well, I mean, that would be the fun part of it. I mean, if you made a show of it, wouldn't that be cool, though?
That'd be rad.
You don't want to be one of those, people that just go and blow it on something stupid. The fortunate thing is we can think this way because I've already lived a very fortunate life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's nothing that I truly want for. I've driven in nice cars. I've stayed in nice hotels. I've traveled around the world. I've been very, very blessed already.
You have to be a professional athlete for 30 years.
Yeah, and so I know my life has been incredibly privileged, and now it's at the turning point of going, okay, how do we give back? How can we? Because like I mentioned, there's so much more joy in that. How do we? The information we have, this knowledge. How do I get it to the right people? Is it executives and business people? Is it house mums? Is it high performances across the board? High performance is not just in sport or in music. It's in every aspect of our lives. You can be a high-performing mum. That can be a mum that's just dealing with anxiety better than she did the day before.
Well, and people that are high-performing perform at a high level across everything in their life. With the quote, like, how you do anything is how you do everything. I think about that a lot when I'm thinking about being lazy or not going for a morning run, or I try to hold myself to a standard that can...
But then it's also okay to be lazy sometimes.
Yeah.
It's also okay to lie on the couch and do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't look at social media and be like, oh, I'm pathetic. No, we're all having sad days. We all have lazy days. We all have days where I don't want to talk to anybody. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. And the days you're feeling like your energy's back, okay, let's go again.
Mm-hmm.
We all need that time to recharge, and I don't think people really think about it like that. Innately, I'm quite lazy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good when I have a goal and I'm really focused, and when I don't have a goal.
Well, that's the interesting thing about humans. I'm big into animal, like elk and moose and hunting and watching animals, and especially where I live, they're around all the time. And when you think about these big, beautiful animals, and so much of the time they're just resting and they're just preparing for when they have to perform, whether it's a fight or whatever.
The recovery is going well.
Even like your house dog, or my dog, he sleeps 80% of the day.
I come back to it. It's like you're a bad person these days unless you're busy.
Mm-hmm.
Please be productive and then be lazy.
Yeah.
Lazy's okay.
Yeah.
When you've been productive, you know.
Busy is a 4-letter word almost.
It is.
Yeah.
100%. You know. So yeah.
Dude, I think that's a good spot to...
Yeah, it's been great.
Thank you. That was fun.
That was really fun. Really, and next time around, I want to interview you. I think you're far more fascinating than I am, and your stories you're telling. So next time around, we just reverse it. All right?
Okay, deal. So where can people find you? Can you give me your Instagram handles and your website and all that?
Instagram handle is Greg Bennett's World, or Greg Bennett World, I think. Twitter is Greg Bennett 1, the number 1. And then Facebook, just on Greg Bennett.
Just search you out.
Yeah, and then,
Cool.
you know, otherwise we're in Boulder here, and we're traveling a fair bit, and then we now have, you know, little Sydney Marie, so we're a family of 3, and so our life has changed a bit. And
Amazing.
yeah, for the better. So, you know, we're pretty low-key this year at the moment.
I didn't even tell that story. You guys came to visit me a year ago, I guess, roughly.
Yeah.
And you guys didn't tell me you were pregnant,
No.
but... like we went to sushi and Laura had ribs and we were mountain biking, and she's like, I think I'm just gonna go walk on the trail, and I'm like,
she loves mountain biking.
you know, I'm like, I see you guys mountain biking all the time. I'm like, what is up? And I didn't want to say anything because you didn't say anything, but we left, and I texted Tim O'Donnell and I said, you don't have to tell me, because I figured Tim knew, but maybe he was sworn to secrecy.
I think he texted us right away saying, I said, Christian knows something.
I was like, you don't have to tell me, but my money's on the fact that Laura's pregnant. And then you guys FaceTime me back with an ultrasound picture.
Yeah.
And I
think we were waiting for that 20 week. We wanted to get a fairway in to make sure it stuck, you know.
It's pretty exciting for you guys.
It's been a blast, you know. Don't get me wrong, the first 6 months, it's a lot of, it's a lot of work, and none of us know what we're doing. And like you talk to every parent in the world, everyone's winging it, and yet everyone's fully ready to give you advice, you know, but no one really knows what they're doing. And I think for the women, you know, and their breastfeeding and all the hormonal changes, and they're very, very strong bond. I think us guys, we have a strong bond with our kids, and I think we see ourselves in them, so we become very much protective of them. Mm-hmm. But I think for the women, it's like this extra uber-charged amount of their bond is something incredible. And this whole experience has been very, very interesting, watching, firstly, the woman go through 9 months. Quite a lot of women go through hell, you know.
Right.
Then they have anywhere from 24 to 48 hours of murder, straight into sleep deprivation. And, you know, this postpartum thing is real, you know, very, very real. And you can watch strong women really struggle, you know, within weeks or months. And I think that's our role as husbands and men, to really, you got to be there. And I think if your wife's having a kid or whatever, find the time to be home for a month or two. Yep. You know, put work aside. I think it's really critical, because I think it can get pretty dark for them, whether it's the hormones or the sleep deprivation. But you know, I was truly blessed and grateful that I was able to be there for Laura, you know, the whole way through that initial 3 months. You know. Yeah.
Well, you guys got a pretty awesome thing going here.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of perfect life. So
yeah, we're pretty happy. Thank you. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right, man. Well, I will see you in Vegas.
Yeah, Vegas.
Actually, we're going mountain biking first. Right?
Yeah, we're going mountain bike today.
This is where I suffer. So
awesome, buddy.
Cool, man. Thank you.
Get our gear on. Yeah. Cheers.
All right. Guys, I honestly didn't think I was going to be on his lottery list. I'm pretty honored. Well, that's it for this week. Be sure to follow along at Life Uncharted Podcast, at Christian Schoff, and at Greg Bennett World for more. And as always, if you have a minute, please share or give us a review. It really helps us out. Okay, until next time, thanks for joining us.